number 27, what does a positive discriminant tell us? So we just talked about that. So when our b squared minus 4ac is positive, when it's greater than 0, that tells us we have two real solutions. What does a 0 tell us? So when our discriminant b squared minus 4ac is equal to 0, that tells us that we have one real solution. And then when our discriminant's negative, b squared minus 4ac, when it's negative, it'd be less than 0. That tells us we have 0 real solutions. So the graph does not touch the x-intercept. So it would be a graph either above or below the x-axis. Alright, for 28 we want to find a discriminant, so we want to make sure that the equation is in standard form, and so when we have a quadratic we want to make it equal 0. So we're going to minus 12 from both sides. And so we end up with a 3x squared minus a 7x minus 12 equals 0. And so the discriminant is b squared minus 4ac, so we need to know our a, b, and c values. So we have our a is 3, b is negative 7, and c is negative 12. So now we just substitute them in and evaluate it. So b is going to be negative 7. Our a value is going to be 3. And our c value is going to be negative 12. Okay, so now we just simplify. So negative 7 squared gives us 49. And what I like to do is multiply the parentheses, so it's going to give me a negative 36. And so now we treat this like a negative 4 times negative 36 is going to give me 144 positive. And so now we add them together, and that gives me 193. So my discriminant is 193. So if the question asks how many solutions does it have, this one would have two real solutions because our answer. Alright, 29, state the zeros for the following functions. So you can go ahead and just make these things equal 0. And so with the first one, this is actually one that students actually miss a lot because they don't know what to do with that x. Basically, you split these two things apart and you make them equal 0. So x equals 0 and also x minus 9 equals 0. And so there's nothing you can do here. X just equals 0. Here, x would be 9. So our answers are 0 and 9. If you think about this, if this x were 0, this 0 would make whatever is in here also 0. So 0 times whatever would still give us that 0. So what's inside what number minus 2 equals 0? X equals 2. Here we'd have two answers. X equals negative 2 and negative 4. And here we'd have just that one answer. X equals negative 6. Alright, for 30, find the zeros of x squared plus 10x plus 29. So x squared plus 10x plus 29. And so your first thing you'd probably want to try is you'd probably want to try to factor this. And so we can get x times x that equal x squared. But now the 29, what numbers multiply to 29? And 29 is prime, so it would have to be plus 29 plus 1. And those numbers will not add to 10. So factoring doesn't work. And so factoring doesn't work, then you have a couple different different choices. You could complete the square, or you could use the quadratic formula. Now, since this middle term is even, I'm going to choose to complete the square. Also, since this is a 1 in front, it's another good problem to complete the square on. So let's move that 29 the other side. And so now we get x squared plus 10x, leave a blank, equals negative 29. And so what you can also do is start the next step. We know this is going to be an x, we know this is going to be squared. So now take half of the middle. Well, that half of that is going to go right here, so we know this is going to be x plus 5, and then the half of that 5 is going to be squared, and that's what goes here. So x squared plus 10x plus 25 is now a perfect square trinomial. So we added 25 on that side, so now we got to add 25 on this side. So that gives us negative 29 plus 25 is negative 4. Now we just need to get rid of that square. So we square root both sides. Now you get x plus 5 equals plus or minus the square root of 4 is 2. The square root of the negative is going to give us an I. So we get plus or minus 2i. Now last step, minus 5 over. And we get x equals negative 5 plus or minus 2i. So these are the zeros for the given function. Alright, 31, find the zeros for the following functions. So let's go ahead and write this as x squared plus 6x plus 11 equals 0. And so if you want, you could try to factor it, try to figure out what numbers multiply to 11 but are going to add to 6. And since 11's prime, you're not going to be able to get 11 and 1 to 6, so you can't factor it. So that doesn't work. So now, since this is a 1 in front, since this is an even, I'm going to complete the square. So I'm going to minus the 11 to both sides. So we get x squared plus 6x equals negative 11. And so I like to start the next step, x squared. Alright, so take half of 6, it's going to go here. 3 squared, it's going to go here, and so we have to do it to both sides. And so now this perfect square trinomial would factor to x plus 3 quantity squared. And so we have negative 11 plus 9 gives us negative 2. Now the whole reason we want to complete the square is so we can do the next step, so that we can then square root both sides, because now I can square root that square and they cancel each other out, and I'm left with an x plus 3 equals, now I can't square root 2, but I can take out the negative, that negative 1, and have plus or minus I rad 2. Now minus 3 to both sides. And we're left with x equals negative 3 plus or minus I rad 2. Alright, so let's see here. Can we factor this? What numbers multiply to negative 3 but add to 4? So since they're going to multiply to negative, that means one has to be positive, one has to be negative. And so since it's 3, I can have 3 and 1, but 3 plus negative 1 won't equal 4. So this is another example where I can't factor. It feels like I can factor it, but when you actually work it out, it doesn't work. Because you want the 3 and 1 to work, but it doesn't work with the signs. Alright, so I'm going to complete the square in this one, again, because it has an even middle term, has a 1 in front. So let's go ahead and add the 3 over. So this would be a good time to complete the problem on your own if you haven't already done so, so you can actually just check your work to see if you're doing it right. So we're going to have the x squared plus 4x, leave a blank, equals 3. And then go ahead and start the next step. Alright, so take half of 4, which is a positive 2. 2 squared gives us 4. So now we have 4 to both sides. 3 plus 4 gives us that 7. And so now we can square root this. So the square root cancels out the square, and I'm left with x plus 2 equals a plus or minus rad 7. Now we just got to move the 2 over. We minus 2 to both sides. And we have x equals negative 2 plus or minus rad 7. Alright, the last one. You can try to factor it if you like, but since 17 is prime, you're not going to get 17 and 1 to negative 8. So we're going to complete the square in this one also. So x squared minus 8x plus 17 equals 0. So minus the 17 from both sides. And I get x squared minus 8x equals negative 17. Start the next step. So what's half of a negative 8? It'd be negative 4. Negative 4 squared is positive 16. So we're going to add 16 to both sides. So negative 17 plus 16 is negative 1. Now we're going to square root both sides to get rid of the square. And now we have x minus 4 equals the square root of negative 1 is I. Now we can add 4 to both sides. And we're left with x equals 4 plus or minus I.